All right, I now call this meeting of the Bloomington Planning Commission to order. This meeting is being held virtually via live stream. Public comment was accepted up until 15 minutes before the start of the meeting. Otherwise, participants would need to have registered and be ready to comment on agenda items or for public comment. At this time, can we please proceed with roll call?
Mr. Stanzik.
Here.
Mr. Dannenberger.
Here.
Mr. Boyd.
Here.
Mr. Mulek.
Here.
Mr. Krieger. Mr. Moore.
Here.
Ms. Motney.
Here.
Ms. McCann.
Here.
And Ms. Hayden.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to make a comment on anything not part of our regular agenda. We do not have anyone registered for public comment. And Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't have anyone submit anything for public comment. Everything was related to a case.
That's right.
Okay, so at this time, we'll move on to item 4, which is a review and action on the minutes of the February 10th meeting. Does anyone have any additions or corrections?
Move that we accept the meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Sorry. Mr. Stanzik. Mr. Stanzik. You could do thumbs up.
He was having audio issues. I don't know if anyone wants to email David.
Okay. All right. With permission, can I move on?
We could do a, yeah, and Dave, I don't know if you can do a *6, but that might help if you have that ability. Yeah, do you want to just move along and maybe we can call him at the end?
All right. See if it's good. Mr. Dannenberger.
In favor.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
Mr. Mulek.
Yes.
And was that last yes Dannenberger or Boyd? Did Boyd get to?
I'm a yes too. I don't know.
Yes.
So yes. Fast. Mr. Krieger. And Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Motney.
Yes.
Ms. McCann.
Yes.
And Ms. Hayden.
Yes.
And Mr. Stanzik.
Well, I think it would still pass.
Okay.
Yep. All right. At this time, we'll get started on our regular agenda items. First up is Z-05-21, a public hearing, review, and action on a resolution to approve S4 Local Historic Preservation District for property 112 East Washington Street, Bloomington, Illinois. And at this time, we'll see a presentation from staff.
Okay. Go ahead, George.
Katie, before we start that, I was just wondering, is staff able to assist Mr. Stanzik or give him a call on a cell phone, or do you guys like me to call him or something, or?
I sent him an email and I copied our IT on that.
Okay.
I've not called him though.
All right. Well, let's see if that works, Dave. When you get the ability, if you get unmuted, let us know. Okay.
can you see my screen from the presentation?
Yeah.
Staff is recommending in favor of the zoning map amendment for, I'm sorry. Let me just take a deep breath and start over and try to get this to share. Okay. We are recommending in favor of KZ 0521, which is an S4 historic preservation local landmark designation and S4 zoning overlay. So the process started in 2019. Actually, we received a petition in 2020. The Preservation Commission held a public hearing and provided a recommendation to the Planning Commission that the Planning Commission, establish a finding of fact and pass a resolution and recommend that City Council pass a resolution to designate 112 East Washington Street as a local landmark. The Preservation Commission also prepared a report that details certain features that are historic, and it also provides information about future recommendations and how to interpret the zoning overlay as it pertains to this property. That report has been forwarded to the Planning Commission, and so staff is recommending that because our ordinance also requires the Planning Commission to establish a finding and send a report to council, that the Planning Commission endorse and even adopt the report that the Preservation Commission prepared, so we can send that to City Council. The purpose of the S4 district is to, protect the built environment, to safeguard our historic and cultural resources, improve property values, strengthen the economy, and really educate future generations about Bloomington's culture and heritage. The subject property is 112 East Washington Street. It is located in the downtown Bloomington National Register Historic District. The building is roughly 12 stories on the first edition and 13 stories on the second edition. It was constructed over a period of years, with the first edition happening in the late 1920s. And the second edition happening in 1940s. Here's the zoning map. It's currently zoned D1. The existing use is offices. The D1 district allows for a number of uses. The Preservation Commission recommended that the uses allowed in the D1 district are appropriate for the site. The building is surrounded by other D1 properties, with the exception of D2 to the north and south and to the east. So the building itself, as I mentioned, the first edition here, which is on the south side, was built in 1928. The second edition, which was built over the years with construction ending in 1947, is on the north side. The south side is an Art Deco style. The north side is a Chicago style. Local architect is Schaefer and Houghton. Their offices were located in downtown Bloomington on Front Street, and was the same office where Arthur Pillsbury had worked as well. So there's some connection there with local architect Arthur Pillsbury, Schaefer and Houghton, and current architects today. This is in the downtown Bloomington National Register District, and some of the significant features that the commission identified are the building's massing. It's built out to the property line, very tall, kind of has a distinct mass that we don't see in other areas of downtown Bloomington. The height is significant. They identified the windows, specifically the transom windows over the doors and the entrances. The commission spoke to the decorative exterior masonry. There's a lot of terracotta and other stonework on the building. There was a lot of discussion at the meeting, and in their packet you have a copy of the minutes, and the YouTube video is also available for review. But a lot of discussion about the sign, specifically the sign that's on on the west facade, and I'll show you that in a second. But the commission and the developers, the property owners, came to an agreement of, kind of a consensus about what an appropriate sign might be like in the future, because the existing sign is really, it's very large. It's probably non-conforming under our sign code. And so identifying that as a significant feature helps ensure that element is protected. There's also some neon lighting on the outside of the building that was identified as significant. So the purpose of the S4 district is really to help guide the building as changes happen, as things progress, to help provide some guidance for how the city and the property owner can work together to make sure that the facade is preserved in a way that speaks to its historic character and original architectural style. These are just some other photos of the facades and the southwest facade here, showing the massive sign that it once read State Farm. Really, the content is not the content is the materials and the size, the shape. Those are more important elements than the actual content of that sign. It definitely came up at the meeting that part of preserving the building is allowing it to be used by future tenants and making sure that it's still a functioning structure. And so the sign was called out as a significant element that increases the marketability and the viability of the building. The Planning Commission tonight is tasked with establishing a finding that the building meets at least one of the 10 criteria for nomination. And I can read through those if you'd like. They are in your packet as well. The Preservation Commission found that all 10 were met, but the code just requires that one is met in order to be eligible for the S4 local district. And so with that, staff is recommending in favor and recommending that the Planning Commission establish a findings and then adopt a resolution that would pass along to City Council that report that was prepared by the Preservation Commission.
Katie, can you clarify that we just need to find that one of those 10 criteria are met to make a finding on number 1 on your screen so that it meets 44.8-4B2? Okay.
Right. We did, Chairperson Hayden, we did receive some public comment, which I shared with the board before, and from Mr. Jim Pearson, and I think he is on the line, and I believe the property owners are also on the call.
Okay. Before we open it up, does anyone have any questions for staff?
I do have a question. What is the impact, if any, to all the people who received the notification?
So per our ordinance, we are required to notify the property owner, the applicant, as well as the adjacent property owners. Mm-hmm. This really, it strictly applies to that property. I mean, the adjacent properties are included in the Downtown National Register District. The local S4 is the city's district, and so the regulations and also benefits that come with that, because there is grant funding associated with it, that applies strictly to the landmark, so strictly to this building. The surrounding properties would not be subject to an extra review or by the Preservation Commission, for a certificate of appropriateness, if that helps.
It does, Katie. you really answered the question. It sounds like there's no impact. It's just for awareness as required by the ordinance that we notify them. Yeah.
Any other questions for Katie?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Justin. Katie, is there a recent example that we have given the S4 overlay to a property that wasn't petitioned by the property owner?
There is, not that the city is aware of. I think at least since I've been here in the last 5 years, we've always had the petition come from the property owner. They wanted to add their property to this. But I do, so there is not that example, but the property owner is on the phone and can share any objections that they might have.
Okay, thank you.
Katie, I've got a question. This is kind of in anticipation of what I suspect Mr. Pearson is going to talk about, and that is if we do this overlay, and it turns out that the requirements of historic preservation are going to interfere with any type of reuse of the building or whatever. Is there anything more to getting rid of that overlay than simply would be the case in a regular zoning classification change?
The overlay could be removed. I believe it requires a 2/3 majority, and I think the process for having it removed is similar to the process for designating, so it would go through the Preservation Commission, Planning Commission, and then City Council.
Okay. Now, is there a supermajority vote required on the City Council on any of this?
To deny?
Right.
Go ahead, George.
Well, either way, because I noted that in terms of our recommendation, this thing would go favorably to the City Council unless 2/3 of us vote to deny it. And I got the impression, if I understood you correctly, it works the same way if you were to eliminate the overlay. And I'm just wondering, so at the Planning Commission level, it looks like the skids are kind of greased in favor of a historic preservation overlay. And I'm wondering if you got a same situation in terms of the City Council vote.
Dave, I don't know that 8-4 of our ordinance, nor 44-17-6, which are the ones that deal with and there's actually another section in 17, Division 17 of the zoning ordinance, that deal with historic preservation issues, that they directly address removal of the zoning overlay. I think you are correct that as you put it, the skids are greased towards denominations, and I think when this came into effect, and I think you may have been with the city then, but I think part of it was that there was this idea about encouraging historic preservation, and the thought usually was that it was going to be the owner that wanted it, or that it was someone in the neighborhood who wanted that designation. I think it could be changed. I think it could be removed. I don't know that it would take 2/3 to do that. Frankly, we have never, at least to my knowledge, had to remove one or wanted to. There is certainly a lot of room to modify them.
Right.
Short of removing it. And I think it could be removed theoretically, just like any zoning could be changed. Right. I'm just saying I'm not aware that it's directly addressed.
Right. I'll be interested in seeing whether the owner is familiar with Mr. Pearson's observations and if that affects their willingness to go along with it. I've only been aware of one situation where there was a historic preservation overlay on a piece of property where the owner did not want it there, and that was a long time ago, but it was disastrous, and I don't want us to get into that kind of situation again.
Yeah, I think Mr. Orduno from Urban Equity Properties is on the line, so he'll be able to address that. And I will say that they've participated in the process from at least November of 2019. I think was the first public hearing we had on it.
Right. I like the idea of historic preservation. I think that building, given its history, is an obvious candidate for it. I just don't want to see us creating an oversized museum piece that can't be effectively used, because if that turns out to be the situation, then all kinds of bad things start to happen as far as upkeep of the building is concerned.
Yeah, so George, it feels like we're getting towards the comments. Just based on, I think, the volume of petitioners that we've got on tonight and our agenda, I was going to propose that we do a 5-minute time limit on comments. Do you have any objections to that?
Do we have a number of people addressing this? I don't know how many people in the record you have.
I think between this and probably between our next one, we've got a decent amount of people on the phone.
Mm-hmm. I suppose if it's standard, you could try that, and then I mean I would say 5 minutes would be. I would say certainly no less. I mean, if people want to use less, that's fine. but
Okay, well, we'll start there and apply it consistently. So when we've done meetings in person, so we've not done a virtual meeting where we've enforced a time limit. I'm sure other boards and commissions have. Katie, is that something that, like, I can just keep an eye on it, but I don't know if there's a way for us to display?
I can try to do something with my phone, I guess, and see if we can get a countdown clock.
Yep, that's what I was going to do the same. So
that's what I've seen done in other.
Yeah, for the record, how many people are registered to speak?
There are 9 people called in, 10 including you, George.
Chairperson Hayden, I will set the timer on my phone for 5 minutes, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Will this include their remarks or and I suppose the questions would be separately, correct?
Yeah, so I would say 5 minutes for remarks, and then if we ask follow-up questions, that will not count against their time.
Right.
All right. Then at this time, I'm going to open up the public comment portion for Z-05-21. At this time, anyone who is registered to speak, when it is your turn, you'll press *6 to unmute yourself. Sometimes you do have to press that twice. But at this time, we will invite, do we have a petitioner? Well, I guess we don't really have a petitioner on this one, but perhaps the building owner to speak.
Well, the petitioner was the Franklin Park Foundation. I don't know if that person. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hey, George. This is Jeff Orduno with Urban Equity Properties. I think it would probably make the most sense for Mr. Pearson, since he had several observations. If he'd like to speak, he can go ahead, and then I'll respond to those within my comment time, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Great. I'll mute myself again then.
All right, Jim, if you want to get unmuted, I'll swear you in.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Jim, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Jim Pearson, address 14 Hearthstone Court, Bloomington, Illinois.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you. I'm Jim Pearson, Senior Architect for Pearson Design Group of Bloomington and a former commissioner on the Planning Commission. I hope you've all received a copy of my opposition letter I sent to Katie Simpson, which I think some of you have for sure. That's good. Here are my reasons. I'm not going to go over the letter or speak it to you, tell you. But one of my reasons, one is the historic preservation overlay zoning places harsh restrictions on the owner. And specifically that I know, having talked with the state of Illinois, is that no changes can be done to the existing exterior of the building. Two, the owner, UEP, is not requesting the overlay, to my knowledge. If they were, I would still oppose the overlay. Third, the sponsor for the overlay zoning is Franklin Park Foundation of Normal, Illinois. Franklin Park Foundation is not a property owner in Bloomington. Franklin Park Foundation does not have a business located in Bloomington. And its mission statement on its website is to expand tree donation programs and facilitating sports affiliate and program scholarships. My conclusion is that Franklin Park Foundation has no standing on this issue. Fourth reason, that the developer, UEP, has shown its intention to keep it as a business office occupancy. If they were to change their business plan and make it a mixed-use occupancy, or even just change its occupancy to, let's say, apartments, they would have to spend millions to make it comply with existing codes. So they may not want to change the occupancy. I can say that I developed a plan of what would be the best conceptual use of the building. And back in 2019, I thought a mixed use would be a good way to go. But they're staying with the business office plan, that's fine. Just remember, State Farm never applied in all their years there for a historic preservation, local overlay whatsoever. I think because they knew when they were going to get out of that building that it was not to their advantage to have that if they were to sell it. Furthermore, and that's my opinion, that it would be very difficult to sell if EEP wished to sell it. They obviously have a lot more floors to rent, but I'm sure they've considered that. And so my last comment would be, please not approve this resolution overlay, because mainly historic preservation is for residences and maybe a few government buildings, not commercial buildings. In other words, McLean County Courthouse, now a museum, probably has a historic preservation designation or overlay, which I know a lot of the downtown does. But how many commercial buildings have asked for that? And is it really significant? There's a little Art Deco on the bottom, sure. That's fine, but certainly, State Farm is the historic reason for the well-being of Bloomington Normal. But I think the owners will do fine if they leave it. They will be well suited for the future, no matter what they want to do, but not having that overlay over their head. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Thanks.
All right, Mr. Arduino, at this time, do you wish to make a comment or respond to any of Mr. Pearson's comments?
Sure, Madam Chair. Thank you. And take the commission.
We'll get you sworn in really quick.
Oh, sure.
Yep. Name and address, please.
Jeff Orduno, O-R-D-U-N-O, address 134 North 1st Street, Rockford, Illinois, 61107.
And do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
All right. Here's what I would say in response to Mr. Pearson and in general on this. Our company owns our affiliated entities. We have different companies, but we own over a dozen historically preserved buildings. So that's kind of the backdrop for the context for this. I would come in here and say I'm relatively neutral about the whole thing. Here's why. I think it's reasonably hard to deny the historical significance of that building, both in Bloomington and even arguably at a national level. The headquarters for one of the nation's largest companies is that building, or was that building, built in part by its founder. I think it's a game to try to deny that. So in terms of looking at criteria, yes, I think you would probably have to find that the building is historically significant. That all said, Mr. Pearson raises excellent points about the marketability of the building in the event that the overlay is placed. Here's my further explanation of that. Having done a number of these buildings, both as a company and including myself personally, there are things that you work through. You work through with historic preservation, you work through with the fire department, the building department, in terms of how do we accommodate the fact that we want to keep those original staircases, for example, that the fire department maybe doesn't love, but those are the staircases. And frankly, it's a zero lot line building, I believe, so you can't just attach a stair tower to it. So how do we deal with these things? You figure those things out. And I'm optimistic, at least reasonably so, that if I come back to City Council and say, or to the Historic Preservation Commission and up to you and up to City Council and say, look, here's some great thing we want to do with the building, but here's the problem. We need something allowed under the S4. We need you to give us some grace under that. It's going to make an exterior change, but here's what we need. That gets worked out. That I have never seen an intractable situation among historic preservation, building department, fire department, other local officials. And when I say historic preservation, I mean both at the state and the national level. So I am optimistic that if we come and say, hey, we have this great use, this is going to be great for downtown, everybody says, okay, we can bend a little bit on this or that. Let's get it figured out. Mr. Pearson is technically right, though. In a world where I can't get those things done, that is a problem. That is a problem for the marketability and the value of the building. So I want to say I don't necessarily disagree with him, but I understand also the concern of the petitioners. At this point, my perspective is the building is saved. The mission is accomplished. It's not going to be torn down. We have things, the reason we have buildings is basically to lease them out. So the building will be there. But that's kind of it. I mean, I think I will tell you this. Katie and Melissa Hahn and George Boyle have done a great job, I think, navigating this process and working with both the petitioners and us to try to bring everybody to the table. And like I said, I'm not on a divergent page from the petitioners. We save buildings. That's what we do as a company. We save them, restore them, and lease them. I certainly understand from a purely economic perspective Mr. Pearson's comments. So I would trust you that, if you're concerned about the marketability of the building, that would probably favor a no vote in terms of approval. But if you're optimistic that things can get figured out, I'm willing to ride that train and say, all right, if I need something, I'll come back and ask, and we'll get it figured out. So that's kind of where we're at. And we just want to be a good partner. We're excited about the building. We're excited about downtown Bloomington. We love Kepler Vision, excited that they wanted to stay in Bloomington. That's the reason we changed the plan for the building. We had the architecturals for the residential units. Kepler came along, and that's hard to pass up, partially because they were so energized about being in downtown Bloomington. So when we say all these things, I'm just always looking for practicality and pragmatism. So if you can reasonably assure me that we're going to have practicality and pragmatism if we need to come back and ask for something, then I think we're all fine. But do what you need to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Arduino. We're at our 5-minute time. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Arduino?
Do I get a comment?
We'll open it up, Mr. Pearson, to see if there's anyone else who wishes to comment, and then we'll let you make a rebuttal.
Sure.
Yep. And particularly, do we have anyone from Franklin Park on the line?
I don't believe so. I'm just checking to see. We have some numbers that are on the line that did not register. So
I think, and Katie, you may be able to show specifically where the Franklin Park Foundation is based on their application. But the Franklin Park Foundation, I believe, gave an address that was indeed on Franklin Park as its headquarters in Bloomington. So I don't know that I'm not aware of it being a purely normal organization, nor of it being primarily concerned with sports. And I think that may be evident from the materials that are in the packet, certainly from the application. Just to address the point raised about standing.
Yep. Thank you, George.
Also, I might also say that there's not actually a standing requirement that requires Bloomington residency for the nomination in the 8-4. Just as a matter of law.
If I could comment just one short sentence in here, is that I've worked on hundreds of projects as an architect, and the minute the occupancy changes from whatever it presently is, the building officials emphasize and require that you follow the existing codes and update. If it's an existing building, you update it to the present day code. And to work something out would be highly unusual to try to work something out when no one else has to comply. No one else can ask for a, let's work it out. I mean, so that's why I say you're just as well off not to have any overlay, and I think for the future of the building, if you were to keep it forever, great, because I don't think you're going to destroy or take down any of the architectural characteristics of the Art Deco and Chicago school stuff. But so I think we border on the fact that that you may be trying to create a perception that, not intentionally, but that, well, let's work it out. Well, then somebody has to give. I mean, actually, to do a stairwell on the outside of the building, that's city property. I'm sure the city would allow you to do that because the sidewalks are wide there, and that you'd still be able to get pedestrian, or you will be able to get pedestrian traffic around the stairwell. So, and I know the fire department I'm not sure about the police department, but the fire department really looks over a building and will say what they want changed. And so I think you're best off, sir, is to not really desire to have that overlay put over and enjoy expanding the building. I mean, within its boundaries, so to speak.
Chairperson Hayden, we're getting the applicant the call-in information so they can join the meeting.
Okay.
If I can just clarify your earlier question about the process to have it removed, this is in chapter, we were able to find that in the code. It's in chapter 8-4C, and the amendment and recension process would go through essentially the same process that we're going through for designation.
And maybe can we clarify a point of order that Mr. Stanzik brought up, that unless 2/3 of us vote against this proposal, it will be recommended to City Council?
That's accurate.
Okay.
I thought if you wanted to disallow the overlay, it needs 2/3.
Chair Hayden, could I, point of order? I think we're still in the public comment section. Can we move on to other people who are here for public comment?
Yep, so I think we are waiting on the petitioner. Katie, do you have a name?
Tim Maurer, it seems like he's on the phone.
Tim, if you're online, we see your name. If you press *6, you would unmute yourself. And we'd invite you to make comment on behalf of the petition submitted. Sometimes you have to press *6 twice. Katie, do you want us to give it another minute? Okay.
While we're waiting for Mr. Maurer, I will point out that I do stand corrected. 8-4 sub C does talk about amendment or rescission by the same process and under the same rules as the putting on the overlay, so it can be rescinded. And it is directly addressed.
Are there other people here for public comment on this topic? Would Tim be the last one?
No one else registered for comment on this item.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought that the long list we had was people for this topic, but it's just for all of our agenda topics. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
It sounds like maybe IT, we might need some help with this. Mr. Maurer's having trouble being unmuted. He's hit *6 multiple times.
Can I move for a recess while we sort that out, if that's the next step? Take a little break. Maybe until 4:50.
Did not get a second, so that motion does not carry forward. Katie and George, I would be inclined to close the public comment.
You certainly could do that. I'd prefer to give him another minute here since it did come up in terms of who's, since it is their petition. I don't know if IT is assisting them at this point. I think there's a possibility if we pause for a moment that we may be able to get them to join onto the phone.
Okay, I'm seeing some movement in our attendee list. Okay, well, given George's stance, then I'm going to propose, take Tyson's suggestion of a 3-minute recess. So let's recess until.
I will say, I spoke with Mr. Maurer, and I could try to join him on a 3-way call here if we want to do that.
Okay, I think that will probably still take some more technology time than us sitting here in dead air. So I'm going to still give us the 3 minutes. So everyone come back, please, at 4:52, and we'll try to get this comment.
How's it going, sweetheart? Well, I got my comment in. Well, they're taking a recess.
Jim, your mic is still on.
Okay. I just go off. Okay. What? I don't know how to do that. What hide?
George, have you had any luck on your end? George, can you hear us?
This is Tim.
Hi, Tim. This is Megan Hayden. We are
Hey, Megan.
on a short recess, and we're just waiting on a couple people to jump back in.
I'll stand by.
Thank you. All right, I believe we have everyone back, so we will reconvene our meeting of the Bloomington Planning Commission after a recess. We do have the petitioner, or Tim Marr, speaking on behalf of the petitioner on the line. Tim, can I please get you to state your name and address for us, and we'll get you sworn in?
Yes, Tim Maurer, Franklin Park Foundation, 317 East Chestnut Street in Bloomington, Illinois, 61701.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
It will be the truth.
All right, thank you. Please proceed. We've got a 5-minute timer going that will be displayed on the screen, but we can give you a 30-second warning if you'd like.
Oh, that's okay. You just cut me off when it won't be that long. So thank you very much for hearing this today. You've raised some good questions. The owner has been a fantastic person to work with. The city's done a very good job on the report. The person that's calling in, Mr. Pearson, in opposition, has a couple of his facts wrong. His opinions he's certainly entitled to, but the facts are that, one, Franklin Park Foundation is in Bloomington, Illinois. It has standing. I'm not sure that it has to have a standing under the ordinance, but it does have a standing, and it is specifically created for the preservation, restoration, and maintenance of the Franklin Square National Register Historic District, which is a neighbor of the downtown historic district and the State Farm building, now the Kepler building, or whatever Mr. Arduino and his crew decide to rename it. So there's that. The other thing I'd like to address is that the perception that no one has ever been rezoned historic without them petitioning for it is inaccurate. I live in a historic district. I lived in it when it was made a historic district in the original ordinance passed in '87. None of us petitioned for that, and that was the case with all of the buildings that got brought in under the original ordinance. Now, that's beyond the 5 years that Katie's been here, and what she says is true. I'm not disputing that. It's just that there is precedent here. And to the extent that it's relevant for this, that is a fact. The way the ordinance is written is that an applicant can be anybody, basically, or it can be the building owner, or it can be the city. So that's why it's been recommended to you to rezone it, is that it meets the ordinance and it meets the criteria. So, and I want to emphasize one thing here. This is my last thing is that I think this is an important opportunity for the city and the Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, because of the quality of the people that urban equity properties have turned out to be. The original reason for the petition was to keep the building from being knocked down and to preserve something that is very important for the history of Bloomington and McLean County, and it is a contributing feature to a historic district now. State Farm also did utilize investment tax credits because they did historic restoration and preservation work that conformed to the Interior Secretary standards. That was back in the 1999 through 2004 zone. And the precedent that's most important is that if you can find a group who is an advocate for preservation and an owner who is an advocate for preservation, and they join together and proceed amicably and cooperatively and collaboratively for something that benefits the community, that's a positive outcome, honestly. So I think that should be kept in mind, is that this is an effort of, I can't say that it's a joint effort. They're not a petitioner, but they've been cooperative, they've been forthright, and they are supportive of historic preservation. So that's a win. And I'd like you to take note of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Does anyone have any questions for him? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak during the public comment portion of Z-05-21?
I would just like to say, this is Mr. Pearson, that I think the building owners can do fine without having the overlay. I was listening to, maybe it was George, about 2/3 to vote against this. I believe that 2/3 was about the city council, who actually makes it an ordinance, and that the 2/3 is to overturn it, not to approve it. So David had the right questions so far as is it a majority or is it a super majority? And so you have to look out for precedents as far as building codes. I don't think this owner has to do anything to the outside of the building, so that's fine. So they can survive just fine with it, without it, in my opinion. Thanks much.
Just to respond, there is in section 8.4 sub D a provision that says that a concurring vote of two-thirds of the Planning Commission members then holding office shall be required to reach a determination that a nominated historic landmark or historic district does not meet the criteria for designation.
And that's very high level.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I think that's a point of order that will be outside of public comment. So at this time, I'm going to close the public comment and open it up for discussion amongst the commission, discussion and questions on any potential point of order. But just to reiterate, what our charge was at the beginning of this case was that, one, to determine if one of the 10 criteria are met that would have S4 apply. And then the second matter to consider is if we endorse and potentially adopt the Historic Preservations Commission and recommendation to City Council.
Katie, would you mind sharing those 10 items again? I'll say I think I agree with several of these. but since we only need to pick one, I feel like number one is quite a strong case for it, given the significance of the building for, as was pointed out in public comment, the significance of it for the role it played in State Farm, which is a significant national entity.
Tyson, would you like to make a motion?
It's like Justin had his hand up. He was before me. I shouldn't have cut him off.
I was playing by the rules and raising my hand, but I was just going to make the comment that I agree with Mr. Arduino that there's hard to object the historical significance of the building. I feel that it meets all 10 of these criteria. So if there's I would move that we, I don't know what the right wording is, approve and agree with these 10. Are they findings of fact? What are we doing here?
Katie, can you get the first page on the screen, please?
Justin, are you moving to adopt the findings of fact presented by the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do, George.
I'll try to second that.
I'll second.
All right, can we do any discussion before we do a roll call?
It's not, I just want to note that that's not in the recommended motions, though. What we were supposed to do is, I guess that through doing that, we would be establishing that the petition meets the criteria of the relevant chapter of the city code. Is that what we'd be doing?
Right, it is a different, you're right, it's a more narrow motion. That's accurate.
Okay.
Am I correct in understanding that essentially what we're doing is a twofold thing? One is determining whether it meets those standards, and number two is making a recommendation on whether the city council should apply the overlay.
Yes, and that should be done in two separate motions.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Motney.
Yeah, I just have a question. If we only need to agree upon one, it would seem like either number one or number two would be something that we could consent around. That's my thought. If you get back number two, the location of a site of a significant local event, the founding of the company, of course, and the establishment of that headquarters, given its impact on our community. And similarly to Tyson, I just, believe that for those first three, without regard to architectural considerations, would be something that we could consent around.
My question is, does anybody believe that any of those standards are not met?
Chairperson Hayden, I think we have a motion and a second that all 10 would be met. So I would say if somebody disagrees, then they could vote to deny that motion, and we could come back with a different motion. Or if Mr. Boyd feels necessary to amend his motion, he could do that as well. But we do have a standing motion.
Right, the motion that's on is about adopting all 10. There may be more discussion, I don't know. Right?
Yeah, so we can do a roll call because I think it'll still pass, but I think the cleanest thing and what we were charged to do was just, I don't think we needed to be specific as to a number that we're adopting. It was just to adopt. So let's keep that in mind if this fails, but let's go ahead and do a roll call, please. And again, this is to adopt all 10.
Mr. Stanzik?
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger?
Yes.
Mr. Boyd?
Yep.
Mr. Neelick?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger? Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Motney?
Yes.
Ms. McCann?
Yes.
Ms. Hayden?
Yes. All right, that carries. So then the second thing that we need to consider is if we adopt, or if we endorse, and then I think a step further is even to adopt the Historic Preservation Commission's report and recommend approval to council. Katie or George, Any thoughts on distinction there?
Well, I would think maybe you could do a separate motion adopting the report and then a third recommending the designation. Recommending the council designate as a historic landmark. Pardon me?
I think Kim was unmuted. I think they're having technical issues.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind. But I think if we're going so far as to adopt, then I think that probably the recommendation speaks for itself. I just didn't know the difference between endorse and adopt.
So the ordinance says that the Planning Commission must make a determination based on the evidence presented as to whether it meets the criteria for designation. So we just did that. And then such a determination shall be passed by resolution of the Planning Commission and shall be accompanied by a report stating the findings of the Planning Commission concerning the relationship between the criteria for designation and the nomination of the historic landmark. The Historic Preservation Commission did that, and that has been passed on to you and is included in the packet and is actually in the draft resolution included in the packet is provided as an Exhibit B. So I think the draft resolution in the packet would be to, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the packet, but it would be to include, you know, if you were adopting that resolution as it's written, you would be then adopting the report from the Planning Commission, from the Preservation Commission, and incorporating in that, and then that entire your resolution and report, as well as the resolution and report of the Preservation Commission, will go to City Council.
Okay, so to make we need to have a report, and we are adopting the one that has been created by the Preservation Commission. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, Justin's got his hand raised. I'm looking at the hand raising now.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we endorse and adopt the report put together by the Historic Preservation and move it on to council with our approval.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
This is Justin. I'll just add for my discussion. My only concern coming in here, and I know it's not required, was getting the property owner's opinion on the matter. And I absolutely love Mr. Arduino's energy and passion for his company's passion for preserving these properties. And I think it aligns with the spirit of the S4 overlay. And that's why I was happy to make the motion.
I had a comment. After reading Mr. Pearson's letter and listening to his comments, I had some serious reservations about this, not having anything to do with historic preservation, but with the future of the building as a physical asset. My primary concern was whether the owner was in favor of this process and whether the owner knew what they were getting into. After listening to Mr. Arduino speak, it becomes very apparent to me that he knows what he's getting into. So at this point, I am my concerns have been pretty much allayed. I will say for the record, and I think that anything that happens in the future is going to happen. There's no way that the friendly spirit of cooperation that pervades the city government at the present time is going to continue. So if there was a need to make the change sometime in the future, there's no way anybody presently can bind a future city council. Having said that, I am persuaded by Mr. Arduino's comments that he knows what he's getting into and is very capable of handling whatever complications may result from the overlay. So I'll vote yes when the time comes.
Can I just, for the point of clarification here, say that we're looking, when we're considering this motion, are we looking at the second recommended motion, which has both the recommendation to council that the building be designated as a historic landmark and have the S4 zoning overlay placed on it, as well as adopting the report by the Historic Preservation Commission? You'll see that under number 2. Is this a compound motion to do those two things, or are we doing something differently?
That is what my motion would be, yes.
Okay.
If there's no other comment, we'll do roll call, please.
Mr. Stanzik,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Mueller,
Yes.
and Mr. Krieger.
I abstain.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Montney,
Yes.
Ms. McCann,
Yes.
and Ms. Hayden.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Everyone, give me a thumbs up if you're good to move on to the next case. Okay, maybe do a feint if you need a break in the middle of this one. But otherwise, we'll move on to item B on our agenda, Z-28-20, public hearing, review, and action on a petition submitted by property owner Terra LLC to rezone Tract 1 located west of Woodbine Road from B1 to R2 mixed residence district, and rezone Tract 2 from B1 general to R3A multiple family residential district. If you'll recall, we met on this 2 meetings ago. This has been remanded from City Council based on their January 25th meeting. So at this time, Katie, I'm assuming that you guys have some sort of updated presentation, maybe just with some more background on why this was remanded and what's being asked of us today.
We don't have, staff doesn't really have new information. I did in this presentation put together, I guess, some specifics of what exactly it is that you're voting on, just for the sake of clarity, if that would be helpful.
Yep, I think that would be helpful. And then I think our packet mentioned that there were additional findings of fact that we were being asked to consider. So maybe that's just the specifics that you'd be sharing.
Yeah, I think that the only change to the findings of fact is addressing Tract 1, which is the proposed R2, and Tract 2, which is the proposed R3B separately. But the recommendation is still the same. We still find that all of the criteria are met. So with that said, I don't think I have to go back over the zoning and use context of this area. But I guess for additional context, the townhomes that are to the north of this parcel were permitted by special use prior to the zoning ordinance update. Special use permit was granted in 2018. And so the reason that the process for more residential developments in this area looks a little bit different is because the zoning ordinance was updated so that that's no longer a special use in B1. I think it just also for clarity, here's Tract 1, that's the proposed R2, and those are roughly the boundaries of how far down that would extend. Same with Tract 2, those are roughly the boundaries of how far that would extend as well, and that's the proposed R3A zoning. For the sake of clarity, transition yards are required when different densities and different intensities of use are adjacent to one another. So say Tract 1 is attached single family, a transition yard involves landscaping, involves screening, would be required where it butts up against the Sapphire Lake subdivision, as well as where the vacant open space is to the south of that parcel. Say tract 2 is multifamily, that would require a type 2 transition yard to the south where there is open space. It does not abut on any detached single family housing, but where it meets tract 1, there would have to be a type 1 transition yard. And I have a graphic that'll make that a little more clear. But just in terms of what those transition yards entail, for type 1, it's a minimum 5-foot depth, a 6-foot tall wall of some kind, 2 evergreen and 2 flowering trees per 100 feet, and 5 large shrubs per 100 feet. And for the type 2 transition yard, depth of 8 feet at minimum, 4 evergreen trees and 2 flowering trees required per every 100 feet, and no shrubs required. So it's not my best graphic design work, but this is roughly what that would look like for this site if the rezoning were to be granted. So you can see the lighter green indicates type 1 transition yard, and the darker green indicates the type 2. I don't think I necessarily need to reiterate the district purposes, but I did just want to make the point that the zoning map amendment requests are complementary to one another. The R3A district is, or can be considered, as it says here, a zone of transition between non-residential districts and residential districts of more moderate density. The R2 district, in turn, can be considered a zone of transition between lower density residential and districts with greater intensity of use or greater dwelling unit density. I also wanted to look at the residential site standards for attached single family or multifamily in R2 versus R3A. There is not a whole lot of difference between them, except for in terms of the minimum area required per dwelling unit, which you can see is about half of what it is in R3A as it is for R2. And then that brings us to the findings of fact, but we are ultimately recommending in favor of both rezoning requests.
Thank you, Caitlin. Do we have any questions for Caitlin?
Question. Within our packets, are we provided the other email communications that have been sent on this to other city officials along the way, and also in aggregate from prior meetings? Do those accumulate each time? Or do we kind of start over with the group of people who might write at any given meeting, since this has now been met about twice by us and once by the council?
I'm not sure. Katie may be able to answer that.
We did not include the emails that were sent to City Council in the packet, and we also did not include the emails that were sent previously for when the case was to you. We did forward to the Planning Commission the emails we received this time for this public hearing. If you want that information, we can provide that. I'm kind of deferring to Kim and George.
I will say we generally have do not, if it's not directed to the commission itself, we have not been providing emails that are written to political persons or other people in the community.
I suppose really, and I perhaps, Megan, you guide me if it's best to save this for when you open it up for discussion. We can go on with the others who are here to speak or have questions, and I can save my questions for that discussion.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good question. So I think that the behind the question is that we did receive at least one forwarded email. We will probably hear some testimony here in a moment, but should we consider that an aggregate with the testimony that we've already heard as part of this case or seen? So Katie and George, maybe you can speak to that from a procedural standpoint.
And as you do speak to that, I guess I just wanted to add on that, sorry. I'm not sure if anybody else is speaking. I know I'm getting a lot of feedback here. I was just going to ask another question. The reason I think that the inquiries to the city council would be relevant for us, representing the constituents' viewpoint, might be in favor, is because that's the reason why we're meeting about it again today. Whatever that content was, prompted the council to send it back our way.
I think the conference room being unmuted is what's causing an echo. If we can get them muted again until we're ready for testimony.
The point of coming back to the Planning Commission, though, is to make findings based on information that's on the record, so that, I mean, there's some practical problems with getting whatever was sent to city council members because we don't run their email in a sense. With respect to decisions people made, I would just ask them to as much as possible, base it on statements that are made on the record or sent to the commission during their hearings that are made part of the record, so that there is a basis for the commission's recommendations one way or the other.
Thanks, George. I think that's probably as good of guidance as we'll get for this particular meeting. So I see Tyson's had his hand up and I see David's unmuted. So we'll go Tyson and then David in terms of questions for staff.
I just wondered if there was a summary of the reason why this was remanded to us, something we should be looking out for to make sure that what we provide this time might hit the mark better. I didn't watch that particular meeting, so I'm not in the loop on that. Was anybody able to give us the outlines of what the concerns were?
Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was they wanted to provide the opportunity for additional testimony from residents.
Okay, so to listen to the concerns that are brought forth in this hearing to see if that additional information would change our decision.
I believe so.
I did watch the meeting, so I'm familiar with what took place. There was reference to conflict and the need for conflict resolution to come up with a recommendation that reflected some balance. That was my takeaway.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Sandzic, do you have a question? All right.
No, I just forgot to unmute or to mute myself. Sorry. Okay.
Caitlin, I have maybe a question that George might not let you answer, but in our packet, staff continues its recommendation that we approve the petition as written. However, there is this disclaimer. It's on I have no idea what PDF pages it is, but it's 4 of this particular case that states that there were inquiries to rezone both properties to R2 with the guidance that we only consider what's in front of us. However, that kind of asterisk of even bringing that up makes me question if city fully supports the R3A recommendation. Does that question make sense?
It does, Megan, and the reason that was included in the staff report was because we had received some inquiries about whether or not the amendment could be changed, and the answer would be no. I mean, the petition that's before you is for a certain request. So if City Council or the Planning Commission felt that R3A is not appropriate, somebody, the property owner or City Council, would need to come back with an additional or a new amendment, a revised petition proposing a different district. So what we were trying to do by including that was just to kind of reinforce the purpose of the public hearing, which is to gather additional evidence and information and testimony on the application as it's been provided.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. So it does answer my question, and just from experience on this commission, typically staff performs you guys have a process with our petitioners before they come before us, where you work out what the best recommendation would be. So I'll save that for our comment portion. You answered my question. Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, then at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing for Z-28-20. We typically give the petitioner the chance to speak first. So if anyone would like to speak on behalf of the petition or in support of the petition, they may do so now. And I do see that we have Mr. Balakrishnan on the line. So if you would like to go first, we'll get you sworn in.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you please state your name and address for us?
This is Krishna Balakrishnan, 1904 Longwood Lane, Bloomington, Illinois, 61704. Would I be able to speak after the public comment so I can give my responses if I hear anything, or do you prefer me to going first?
You'll have an opportunity after the public comment to rebut, and if you want to wait and do it then, fine, but you also have an opportunity to present now. Is that right, Chairperson Hayden?
I think Megan's screen may have frozen.
Should I take over as vice chair? All right. Does that require a vote, or can I do a coup?
What's occurring?
Megan is frozen, so I was thinking as vice chair, that makes me responsible. So, okay.
Anyway,
yeah, Mr. Balakrishnan, that's if you don't have anything to add, we did hear from you last time, and so that would be acceptable for to circle back with you at the end. So, with that, we will open it up to anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the petition. It's hard to tell here if there is someone in there just having access issues or if there isn't anybody. I'll wait a few more seconds.
Mr. Ratnakumar registered to speak in support of the petition. You may have to hit *6 to unmute.
Okay, I'll give an opportunity for that afterwards, so as not to exclude someone.
Hi, good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Can I swear you in first? Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Ratnakumar Ramachandran.
And do you swear that what you're about to say is the truth?
True.
Okay. We are putting a 5-minute, for this meeting, we're putting a 5-minute limit on it. Since you're on the phone, I will notify you if there's 30 seconds left. Okay, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. And I'm here to talk in favor of Z2820. And thanks everyone for giving me this opportunity. And just for the records, I was in the previous planning commission when this came up, and I was also at the city council meeting. And I was also at both the neighborhood meetings that the petitioner, Krishna Balakrishnan, conducted on this regard. And I'm also the developer of the townhomes, which is adjacent to this rezone petition area. And we have developed 10 townhomes there that are actually attached luxury condos, and we have sold 5 of them, and then rest 5 are currently listed, and we are picking up a lot of inquiries for those. Now, in the interest of those, the residents whom we have sold, and also as I'm owning the 5 townhomes that is still listed, I like to put certain points in front of the planning commission members. Most of the concerns raised against this rezoning were relating to things like green space or schools, which are a little bit assuming the development that we are doing, and based on our inquiries and our checks and researches that we have done and all the studies that we have done, none of these are directly impacting the development that we are currently doing. Most of the concerns raised were relating to the development that has happened in Extam Drive, which is not in any way related to the development that we are planning to do. And also regarding to the density of the homes in the R2, we are planning to develop either a single family home or duplex, which is lesser than the townhome density that we have currently developed. And in the R3 lot, the plan is to replicate the townhome development at this point in time. So with these points or with these plans, we are still confident that the city would help us to move forward with these developments, because we have had a lot of confidence in the city and the investment of whatever we wanted to do in terms of investment in this city, and then also for extending this investment beyond the current 10 townhomes. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker?
I have a question. If the intention is not to build the apartment building, then I'm interested to know why the request to rezone that R3A was not removed and replaced with the R2.
With my understanding from the city zoning and then from the landowner, currently the B1, with whatever the way we did, B1 special use is not available for us to continue the townhome development, and R2 does not allow the current development in its zoning. We need to be in R3A to have the multiplexes like we have developed currently, the townhomes.
I see that Chair Hayden is back online, so I'll cede the chair back to you.
Thank you, Tyson.
Just to catch you up, we've asked, we're currently on people speaking in support of the motion. I mean, of the petition.
Do we have anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of the petition? Do we have anyone that wishes to speak in opposition?
Chairperson Hayden, we had one person register to speak in opposition. They appear to have, they're not on the call anymore. And I followed up with an email, but there's no one else registered to speak in opposition on the call.
Mr. Boyd, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just, the comments that were emailed to us prior to the meeting, do we have to officially adopt those into the meeting?
Yep. Yeah, so what we've been typically doing is after we hear from in person, then we'll adopt those in the meeting. But since Mr. Balakrishnan wanted to wait to respond, perhaps it's beneficial to adopt that now.
With respect to that, what we've often been doing is, well, first of all, we'd verify on the record that Mr. Balakrishnan has received them. Sometimes, as you know, people have asked questions or, raised issues that are in them. They can become part of the record. I don't know about adopting them because obviously we're not. I don't think we're choosing to endorse them, but they do become part of the record. And I'd like to get a statement on the record from the petitioner that they have seen them.
Yep, that's a good clarification, George, that we're not adopting. Just introducing them to the
We're just making a part of the record. And like I say, sometimes in order to give the person an opportunity to respond under oath, there have been questions that, commissioners may raise as a result of having read those emails.
Katie, is it possible to get the email for today on the screen to introduce it to the record? And Katie or Caitlin, I don't want to put you on the spot. This is pretty long to read, but any thoughts on just the highlights of this so that Mr. Balakrishnan has something to respond to?
I would characterize the highlights as concerns over traffic as well as property values. I think some concerns were raised about school capacity as well, and safety. Also green space.
We received, I believe it was 7 in total. And so not all were in opposition. That first one that was on the screen was from Steve and Darby Brinketer, and that was in opposition. The one currently on the screen is from Ravi Duvuri, and this one is not in opposition, it's in favor. The other email we received is from Abby Scott, which was also in support of the map amendment. Please stop me if I'm going too quickly. We received an email from Ted Day that was in opposition, and similar to what Caitlin stated, just some concerns about the impacts on the neighborhoods. Another email in opposition from Jean Kolb, concerns about green space and schools, impact on the school and traffic. And an email from Jim Stengel that is also expressing some concerns for the density. And there was one other, I'm sorry, George, go ahead.
I was just asking if those had been shown, or if Mr. Balakrishnan seen any of those.
Staff emailed them to the petitioner.
Yeah, I did receive the email this afternoon, so I did get a chance to those. Yep.
Oh, good. All right, thanks.
We had one more that came in around 3:30, and so I'm trying to do technology here. Give me 1 second. I'll show that.
Chair Hayden, just another thing for awareness. While you were out, we did not swear. I did not swear in Mr. Balakrishnan, so before his statements, he should do that.
Okay, thank you. And we're just waiting on Katie to show us the last minute addition. So let's give her another minute here.
I think it hadn't been redacted yet, so that's probably what's happening.
Katie, I know we want to make it part of the record. For our purposes now, it's one sentence. Can I read it? And that's sufficient to keep moving. Okay, so the content of the email is, I oppose this rezoning. I oppose due to traffic, safety, congestion, privacy, and home valuation concerns. And that is from Ed Mack. And once that's properly redacted, we'll get that formally introduced. So with that, Mr. Balakrishnan, can I get you sworn in and we'll give you an opportunity to respond?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Yep. Thank you for the opportunity. And again, thank you for your time to look at this petition again for the second time. During the city council, the council felt there was not enough public representation, and then they sent it back to the planning commission so public can have more say into it. And that was the reason we had two neighborhood meetings in the last couple of weeks, both in person and online, both times. We had about 8 people attend in total for the first one, and about 8 to 9 people for the second meeting. Some of the people who attended were the same between the first both the meetings. So with that, we were able to at least had an opportunity to kind of like explain our vision of what the plan is. Like Ratna Kumar had mentioned, what's going to go in an R2 and R3 zoning. There was a lot of confusion about what was going to go in there, and that kind of like helped with most of the residents' understanding of what's coming into those zoning areas. As far as school district, I did read in the email. I apologize, I didn't receive any email, so I was not able to respond to it. I just went back and looked at my email. It was in my spam folder for some reason, and I didn't get an opportunity until I saw that in the people's email today that I didn't respond to them. So there was a question about the school district. So I got the school counts from our district superintendent, previous district superintendent, when we did the first development. There was 600 count is what he mentioned for Benjamin, and 875 for Evans Jr. As the capacity of the school, and currently I believe both the schools are under capacity as per the Illinois school record site. So we're under capacity from as far as the school perspective, and as far as the green space, as per the city zoning requirements, there is the Parkland dedication that they're working with the city. That'll be part of the final platting process. So there'll be enough green space with our development. And also, as Caitlin mentioned, all our developments will meet all the transitional yards between those zoning districts. So that'll alleviate green space issues and stuff. And as far as traffic, the way we have it right now, we are not planning to extend Woodbine Road all the way to Pamela. So the traffic would divert from our existing development into G Road and on Leslie Drive, as opposed to people's conception of, going into Exton and Pamela Drive to get into, I'm sorry, not Pamela Drive, to get into Exton and Norma Drive, to get into Towanda Barnes and GE Road as such. So those would alleviate some of the concerns from the neighborhood as far as the traffic pattern goes from our existing development. And what else? And the proposed home values was one of the concerns. Like we mentioned earlier in our public meetings, these are going to be high quality homes that we are building on R2s, and they'll be priced in the 300s range. So that'll be abetting similar type of development that's adjacent to the R2 zoning. So the home values would drop. I'm not sure, if there's really substantial data or it's just an assumption at this point. I have real no way of telling that. And apart from that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for hearing our case again, and hope this gets approved and we move forward with the development.
Thank you, Mr. Balakrishnan. What questions do we have for him?
I have a question about the traffic redirection to Woodbine Road. The intersection of Woodbine and GE is an uncontrolled intersection, and it also includes the crossing of Constitution Trail in that area. You are I believe I understood you to be referencing traffic concerns only existing on the Pamela Drive side and not the Woodbine Road side.
No. What I meant was the traffic pattern would be on GE that will get onto, would be on Woodbine that will get onto GE Road. And the road on Woodbine is not currently planned to be extended all the way to Pamela Drive, is what I was alluding to.
So the traffic would be then believed to be spilling out through Woodbine Road and GE, where there is a Constitution Trail. The other question I have is, we had a business owner come to the prior Planning Commission meeting to express concerns about the additional traffic through the business areas. I understand there may have been some confusion regard to the invitations for these meetings. I wonder if the business owners were also included and had the opportunity to discuss their concerns. And again, I believe they're all limited to the R3A specifically. I think that's really at least what I'm reading in all of these notes to really be the area of contention.
So I'm sorry, the question was relating to who we sent out the notices to for the meetings?
Yes, if the business owners had the opportunity to be there, and and did you personally invite these folks? I wasn't clear on how the meetings information was distributed.
Oh, okay. So we sent out physical emails. Sorry, not emails. Physical mails to about 120 residences that I got the list from the city that is part of the the part of the current petition too. And I don't have access to any of other people who kind of like had concerns and stuff. I don't have their information to be sent out. So I sent out to all the addresses that, that was given to me. As far as I think it follows the 500 feet between the areas and zoning and stuff. I believe the last meeting, one of the business owners was the Hawthorne Animal Park, and I think he had a thought process where the rezoning was going to occur all the way up to Pamela Drive, which was not the case. And I think that was clarified in the last meeting.
So just to, again, be clear, I'm trying to understand, what is it based on the discussion earlier from the developer? indicating that it would be townhomes in the area also that's proposed for R3A. And the indication is that the R2 would not allow you to do the townhomes in that other area?
By right, that area doesn't allow townhomes. So R3A is the zoning that allows by right without using a special use permit to build the existing type of development that we did on the R3A lots.
Because of the density?
That's how the zoning rules are. R2 allows only single or duplex homes in them. And for the existing type of development to happen, by right, we had to go through the R3A zoning.
Sheila, that is correct. So the R2 district is intended to only allow single family homes and duplexes, which would be it's a structure that has a common entrance but has 2 units in it.
Right.
That type of construction would be permitted without having to go through an additional public hearing process in the R2 district.
So Katie, that's where I'm confused, because I thought I just heard the developer indicate that they were intending to use the exact same style of development that they're currently using on Woodbine Road.
That's cool. So that style of development on Woodbine Road, and I believe there's a picture in your packet, that is technically single family attached townhomes. So because they each have a separate entrance. So that type of development, in order to do that in the R2 district, would require an additional public hearing with the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval of the special use permit and then additional action by City Council. In the R3A district, the type of townhome that is currently there could be built without having to go through that additional public hearing with the Zoning Board of Appeals and with City Council.
And it would also, though, allow the development of an apartment complex at 29 units per acre, which is where the concern from most of the homeowners is coming from. Is that accurate?
There's a number of uses in the R3A district that are allowed by right. Looking in the permitted use packet. Similarly, there are a number of uses allowed in the B1 district, the current zoning, that do not require a public hearing that could be built on the property. So the in your packet there's a list of the permitted use tables for both the B1 district as well as the R district, and R3A would allow multifamily, so more than 3 units in a single structure by right. The question of density, this has come up. So yes, there are 29 units per acre that would be allowed. There are also additional requirements in order to construct within a residential district, such as dedicating parkland, providing stormwater detention, providing parking for those structures. So that takes up some of the land that would be considered that 29 units per acre. If that provides a little bit of additional background. And also just for a process, right now we're just talking about the zoning change. There is a need for a preliminary plan, which would come back before the Planning Commission and City Council, that would show the lot layout, the parkland areas. You know, if the zoning is changed, there would have to be another subdivision as well to facilitate that residential development.
Thank you, Katie. Megan, I'm not sure if we're in the section where we're just discussing amongst ourselves, but I didn't have any more questions for the petitioner.
Thank you, Ms. Motney. Do we have anyone else that has questions for Mr. Balakrishnan? All right, then at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing and then open it up for discussion and motions amongst our commission. I do want to note that staff is asking for 3 motions: establish a finding of fact, and then a motion on tract 1 and tract 2. In our packet, there does appear to be a typo on motion 3 for tract 2, so it says R3B instead of R3A. So just want to clarify that we're looking at R2 for tract 1, R3A for tract 2. Findings of fact, have they changed since we last adopted them?
I added, in case the, I guess to help facilitate breaking this into 3 motions, I added, I broke down the way tract 1 meets the criteria versus the way tract 2 does, but that's the only difference.
Should we consider those separately then and have 4? So findings of fact and then a motion on 1, findings of fact and a motion on 2.
I would suggest that. That way you have a basis for each of them.
Okay.
Separate factual basis for each.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, George. All right, with that, let's open it up for discussion or motions. Ms. Motney, I'm going to let you go first because you've been waiting for this portion, and then I saw Justin's hand, so we're going to go Ms. Motney, Mr. Boyd.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, I've not been a member of this group very long, for about 7 or so months now, I think. This is certainly one where there has been a tremendous outpouring of public sentiment, and I believe what we're seeing through our channels just represents a small portion of it. I became curious about our role as an advisory group. What does it take to have a tipping point where we lean on behalf of a groundswell of constituents who are homeowners in this area who have banded together with a lot of consistent and concerning questions? And within that, I became curious and I started looking back, you know, in the meeting minutes to educate myself in the past about decisions. And I haven't read every packet, but I've read the minutes summarizing meetings back to 2 or 3 years. And generally, I've not found an example, with the exception of maybe adding a sidewalk, where this group, which I realize has changed a lot in its composition, has responded by voting no when there's been sentiment, if there's been sentiment like this. And I guess in terms of just our role as an advisory group, how should we be considering feedback? And it does go beyond just, oh, it's traffic, oh, it's this. I've driven over to this area a couple of times now. People are reaching out to me. I'm trying to be responsible and responsive as a member of this planning commission, which is why I voted no previously. And I shared the context being simply 3A, which I believe reflects the consensus of these meetings that have taken place with the neighbors in that area. I just wanted to share that, Megan, with the group. If not this, I don't know when we would vote no, when there has been such an outpouring. I believe that's why the city council sent it back to us, having watched that very brief discussion, but being aware of some of the context outside the meeting.
Thanks, Ms. Motney. Justin?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the findings of fact for tract 1. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion on that for tract 1? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Stanzik,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Mueller,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger, Mr. Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Montney,
Yes.
Ms. McCann,
Yes.
and Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That carries. So the follow-up to this then would be to recommend approval of rezoning tract 1 from B1 to R2.
This is Justin. I'll make the motion that we recommend approval of rezoning tract 1 from B1 to R2.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Stanzik,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Mueller,
Yes.
no, Mr. Krieger, Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Montney,
Yes.
Ms. McCann,
Yes.
Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That motion carries. So that brings us to track 2. So the same process. Let's talk findings of fact and then a recommendation.
This is Justin. I'll motion that we approve the findings of fact regarding track 2.
I second it. I see nothing different in this public hearing that would change my determination of it. And in fact, there are some people who added in support of it. So I don't see any additional evidence to consider.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask this question, so I'm asking for George and Megan to guide me. I was not at any of these neighborhood meetings. It was shared with me that the petitioner shared at the last meeting himself concern about an apartment building and its impact on the other development that he is building there, which would cause me to have a challenge approving findings of fact as it relates to property value. Again, I was not present at that discussion.
I'd say that the best extent possible would be placing, you'd be wanting to base your vote on what's occurred at the hearing. Without the discussion about public output, there is, so far, there hasn't been anybody speaking against it. I guess one person left. Perhaps the earlier part of the meeting got too long or they had some technical issues.
Yeah, and
certainly you should, go ahead.
Well,
you can vote as you wish.
Yeah, some of our emails did call that out specifically. So I think there's room to consider that. So I think,
right.
And that's item 10 in our list, property values. I just want to make a comment that perhaps was lost when this went to council. And one of the reasons that it came back is that the current zoning B1 would exacerbate the issues that the residents are bringing up, and R3A would be less impactful than what could be built today. And I think that was a lot of the discussion that we had and why we ultimately voted yes. I do think Sheila's point's well met. We do not typically disagree with the staff's recommendation or with petitioners. What I would say is what came to mind is the Washington Street bike lane. And just from sitting in the seat for a couple terms, we tend to see organized citizen groups, and that's where we get a big upswell of comments that are similar enough that sometimes they're even copy and pasted. And what came up during the bike meetings as a pun was a squeaky wheel. So we definitely don't want to ignore citizen comments. and don't want to give that impression. However, I think we do tend to balance the perception that sometimes folks are well organized and maybe not necessarily as representative as they seem just because they are organized. So Sheila, that's my defense of past motions, but did just want to reiterate that I think why I'm going to vote yes to adopt the findings of fact, why we did last time, and what I would want the council to hear from us is that R3A is considerably less impactful than the current B1 zoning, and to address the residents' concerns.
From our prior discussion, though, that was based upon traffic data that was nationalized and not reflective of the actual traffic patterns of the types of businesses that are located in this particular development or would be potentially located in this development in the future. I believe the statistic was given of a round trip number that was more commensurate with that of a drive-through restaurant or something of that nature than what was actually reflecting the businesses that are already in this district. And I will say, in terms of pattern letters and things of that nature, I realize that I'm in a unique situation, but people have reached out to me, actual human beings, not just people who are banding together with pattern letters. And I'm respectful of their feelings. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is to be respectful to those who live in this community and not dismissive of their concerns. I believe that the finding of fact related to property values is a concern. And I will vote on that the same way I voted the last time.
Yeah, I think Megan just texted me. She's having some more connection issues. She'll be right back. So I share her sentiment on the scope of what we're doing here. I was looking through at some of the things that are permitted in B1 right now. Police and fire stations, swimming pools, car wash, gas station, auditorium, medical offices, daycare center, medical marijuana dispensary, and restaurant. All of these things, I mean, they wouldn't impact the schools, but there would definitely be a higher degree of traffic in those. And so what we're being asked today, why I would vote for it, is we're being asked if this zoning, independent of what goes there, would be more appropriate in the location. And I think it seems like we, in my opinion, that it fits and actually helps address some of the concerns about safety and traffic and green space that the residents are bringing up. Mr. Stanzik, sorry, I'll be chair again until Megan gets back. Mr. Stanzik, did you have a comment?
Yes, there are two things about the choice before us that I don't like. At the outset, the question with respect to track 2 is not, do we think the petitioner's proposal for what he wants to do with it is appropriate? I think it probably is. But we've got two situations. One is that the rezoning is a legislative process, and if we approve the petition, we are approving not only what the petitioner says he wants to do on the property, but also what what he could or another person could do with any of the other permitted uses in an R3A zone. So I've got my concerns about that. On the other hand, our choices are not between R3A zoning and something else that we might like, but between R3A zoning and the present zoning. And I think the present zoning has a much bigger downside for the people in the area than the petition, which leads me to conclude that the approval of the petition is the lesser of two evils.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stanzik. So just as a reminder, the motion is to accept the findings of fact on track 2. Go ahead and take that to a vote.
Mr. Stanzik.
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger.
Yes.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
Mr. Mulick.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Motney.
No.
Ms. McCann,
Yes.
and Ms. Hayden.
He's not back on yet. I think we still have a quorum though. I think that still passes. Okay. Justin has his hand up again.
I do. I'm ready. Before I make the motion, I just want to say that I echo Chairperson Hayden's comments as well as Commissioner Moore's comments on my reasoning, as was stated our last time. And I also want to say thank you to the petitioner, who, in my opinion, has gone above and beyond to get public comment and answer questions. Of course, this is a second Planning Commission hearing, and he's been able to do so here, as well as going above and having those public meetings. So I do appreciate that, especially when there is an issue like this that citizens are concerned and passionate about. So I appreciate it. That being said, I do want to make a motion that we approve and recommend to council the rezoning of track 2 from B1 to R3A.
A second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Mr. Stanzik,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Muehlek,
Yes.
and no Mr. Krieger, Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Motney,
No.
Ms. McCann,
Yes.
and Ms. Hayden.
Abstain.
I will cede the chair back to Ms. Hayden.
Sorry.
We're at the we're on to the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you. We've got some life happening. So item PS-01-21, public hearing, review, and action on an application submitted by the Villas at Prairie Vista LP, owned by Robert J. Lenz, trustee, McLean County Land Trust 2315, approval of a preliminary development plan and special use permit for a planned unit development for a single family attached dwelling in C1 office district and multiple waivers. Katie, do we have a presentation from staff?
City staff is recommending in favor of the requested planned unit development, preliminary development plan, and the special use permit to allow for single family attached homes in the C1 office district. The petitioner, when the application was submitted, the petitioner was requesting three waivers from Chapter 24 of the City Code. After publishing the packet, that includes some additional conditions and revisions to the preliminary plan that the petitioner has since worked with staff to address those, and they are here and they can speak to that. The representative is here and can speak to that. But the initial request for the waiver to build a different curb and gutter combination it's my understanding that request is no longer valid, but is no longer needed, that the petitioner will build the curb and gutter to the B-6.18 combination standard that we have in our manual practice. And so that condition was one of the comments that had been sent to staff. So we can, to not complicate things more, we can work through that, but work through that as we get to that part of the case. The property is 7.3 acres located south of Southgate Drive and Greyhound Road. It's just east of US Main Street. It's north of here are gas station, there's the Veterans Clinic, there are retail and fast food. To the south is a lumber storage area. East is a mobile home park, and west is a used car dealership and some other retail and storage uses. The property was recently rezoned C1 office district that occurred last month, and And so the C1 district allows for a variety of offices and some single family and 2-3 family uses with a special use permit. And that is what the applicant's requesting today. Adjacent zoning is residential. There's a manufactured home park to the east, and there's also some residential to the south. Here are some photos of the site. It's currently vacant. The proposed development would include 2 family attached houses. And so the distinction would be this exterior entrance here. Our code defines a duplex as having just one entrance. So these separate entrances is what kind of distinguishes it as an attached house. They're proposing a variety of units and a mixtures of 2- and 3-bedroom units on the track in a planned unit development form. There's also 2 parklets proposed and some on-site stormwater detention. The streets would be private, and here's the site plan, but the infrastructure, the sewer and water would be public. Sidewalk is shown on both sides of the street, and because they're private, but in the future, this has come up a number of times in past discussions, but because they're private and potentially in the future could become public, that was the reason for staff's denial of the request to build the street to a different standard. So that has since been addressed and been remedied. The front yard setbacks for the C1 district are 20 feet, 25 feet is provided. The PUD allows for multiple units on a single family on one lot, and that would be the case here. We would have 24 buildings on one lot, and it also allows for the private streets, like we said, as well as the kind of that common open space, the parklets. There's parklets. Looking at the comprehensive plan, our plan addresses a number of goals related to providing safe and affordable, safe and attractive and high quality housing. Also a need for diversity of housing stock, different ages, different costs, different densities. The special use permit is providing housing in an area that is served by buses, that is near certain Constitution Trail. When Hamilton Road is built, the Constitution Trail will extend alongside of it, and it will be accessible by bike and as well as walking. It's also a Tier 1 infill redevelopment priority in that it has access to utilities and is currently vacant. Looking at the finding of facts, we can evaluate those for a special use permit. There's 6 standards in our code that are related to the impacts on the adjacent uses, as well as on the surrounding zoning areas. Staff finds that those standards are met, that the property has adequate access to utilities, roads, that it has adequate measures for ingress and egress, and that it aligns with the comprehensive plan. Looking at the planned unit development, there's also 5 standards in Chapter 44 related to PUDs, and staff found that those were also met. We can answer any questions you might have, but we're recommending kind of a multi-faceted recommendation here. So recommending in favor of the petition and 2 of the requested waivers. We were recommending denial of the 1 waiver for the curb and gutter to be built to a different standard, and then recommending overall approval with the condition that the additional comments included in the packet and provided to the petitioner are addressed. And that's all that I have.
Thank you, Katie. At this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing portion. Do we have anyone on behalf of the petitioner that wishes to speak?
Hi, this is Nathan Joseph. I'd like to speak in support of the matter being addressed.
Nathan, can you please state your name and address and we'll get you sworn in?
Yeah, full name is Nathan Joseph. Address is 3221 Cates Avenue Northeast. It's down in Brookhaven, Georgia.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, just would like, as
Point
I
of
said,
order, I'm
I would
sorry.
like to speak in.
Are we still using the 5 minutes for this?
Yep, so everyone speaking on public record will have a 5-minute timer. Please proceed, Mr. Joseph.
Okay, thanks. I don't suspect I'll take 5 minutes. I am the developer for the property. Our main office is out of Peoria, Illinois. We've been working with the city of Bloomington for about over a year now to rezone this parcel and work out all of these kinks that are now here being addressed in this requested planned unit development request. The development may be providing affordable housing to residents of the area earning 60% or less of the area median income. It'll be rented to them at rates that are affordable. I don't know that there were specific concerns, or we have not received directly any specific concerns about the schools, but we were proactive in reaching out to the schools, letting them know about the development, and did not receive any negative feedback from them during those discussions anyway, and are ultimately excited about the proximity to the what was new and is still relatively new veterans clinic. I think it'll be a really good asset and good mix between the two down there. So I just wanted to again express my support. Thank the staff for working with us through what have been some kind of tricky hurdles, and thank the Planning Commission for entertaining this. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. Any questions for the developer? All right, do we have anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of the petition?
David Brown, if you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you, David. Please state your
Thank
name
you.
and address to be sworn in.
Yes, David Brown with Lewis Yockey and Brown Engineers, 505 North Main, Bloomington, Illinois.
Do you swear
My
that
firm?
the you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do. I do swear to tell the truth.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. Please proceed.
Our firm represents the developer, and we have provided the civil engineering design for the PUD. And I can't add anything more to the staff report, but I am here in case there are questions that you may have about the technical merits of the development.
Does anyone have any questions?
And I can't hear you.
Mr. Brown will do a sound check. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, it looks like we don't have any questions at this time, but we'll make a note that to address engineering and architectural questions to you.
Very good, thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Tiffany Ackerman here.
Ms. Ackerman, can you please state your name and address for us?
Tiffany Ackerman, 2120 East Swanson, Muskegon, Michigan, 49444.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Much like Mr. Brown, I'm representing the in favor for the project. I'm the architect with Hagrid Young Architects, and I just wanted to make note that I'm here if you have any specific questions on architectural design.
Hi, this is Tyson Moore. I guess I just do have one question. Has this type of material and architecture been something that you've used in the Midwest before? We've got pretty harsh climate up here, so just want to make sure that this has been tested locally.
Yes, definitely. It's something we use in a lot of the areas within Illinois, Michigan, in the general region. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and this is Nate Joseph. If that was kind of directed at me being out of Atlanta where it's a little more warm, I just moved down here just under a year ago, actually, and home is Peoria. A majority of our developments are throughout Central Illinois, so it's being built out of the same materials that we've built in the rest of Central Illinois.
Do we have anyone on the phone that wishes to speak in opposition to the petition? Katie, did we have anyone else register?
Hi, this is Megan Bell. I am the owner, and I just wanted to make it known that I am also available here in support and available for comments or questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bell.
Megan, no one, Chairperson Hayden, no one registered to speak in opposition, and no one else is on the call.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Before we close public hearing, does anyone else have any questions? We've got a panel of experts, so we'll make sure we ask them any of our questions. All right, seeing none, I now close the public hearing portion of this case and open it up for review and discussion on the commission. Katie, for our benefit, would you mind pulling back up that first page with our various motions? All right, so first up would be finding of fact. Thanks, Katie. Any discussion on the findings of fact in our packet? If not, can I get a motion?
This is Justin. I'll motion that we adopt the findings of fact as they benefit Bloomington. I'm happy to see this. I think this is appropriate for this land.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Stanzik.
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger.
Yes.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
Mr. Muehlek.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Montney.
Yes.
Ms. McCann.
Yes.
And Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That carries.
So we still need a motion on this one, right? Even though the waiver's been withdrawn for official purposes.
Yes, I think that's what Katie laid out, that we do need the motion to deny that the curb and gutter waiver.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Stanzik.
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger.
Yes.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
Mr. Muehlek.
Yes.
I'm going to skip Mr. Krieger, but if he appears, tell me. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Montney.
Yes.
Ms. McCann.
Yes.
And Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That motion carries.
I move that we approve 2 waivers in the packet.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Just a point of order, or do we need to specify, have we read into the motion which 2 waivers are being approved since the other ones have been denied?
Good point. Yep. I will retract my motion and I will move that we approve the following waivers: a waiver to allow public sanitary sewer to be located in a public easement in a side yard, and a waiver to allow private street centerline offsets of less than 250 feet to Greyhound Road.
I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Stanzik.
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger.
Yes.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Montney.
Yes.
Ms. McCann.
Yes.
And Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That motion carries. And then last motion to approve the special use with conditions.
I move that we recommend council approve the special use permit with staff conditions, with condition that the staff comments are addressed prior to adoption.
I'll second.
Okay.
All right, roll call, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a point of order in the room.
I think, sorry, Tyson.
Sorry, Katie's saying something, but she's still on mute.
So the motion is for approval of the special use permit. There's also a preliminary development plan. So just clarifying if we're motioning on both or separate.
I'm making a motion identical to what's number 4 on our screen right now.
And that is what I seconded.
Some of that was covered up by the Zoom window, so I didn't see it.
So to paraphrase, the motion is to recommend that City Council approve the special use permit for single family attached homes and the requested preliminary development plan for the Villas at Prairie Vista planned unit development with the condition that the staff comments are addressed prior to adoption.
Correct.
Okay.
Great paraphrase.
Kim, is that reflected in the minutes, that wording?
I would ask Caitlin, but we'll make sure.
I'll get on it.
All right, all right, roll call, please.
We all have a piece in this. So Mr. Stanzik.
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger.
Yes.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Montney.
Yes.
Ms. McCann.
Yes.
And Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That motion carries. All right. We're coming up on hour 2 without a break, but I think this last item is quick because it does seem to be, I think it's a carryover from a previous discussion. But Katie, can you confirm for me that this is just sending to council what we've already approved?
This is just routine in nature. We're required every year to adopt an official zoning map that reflects the zonings from the previous calendar year. What is actually in the packet, and we have a quick slide prepared if you would like to see it, but this map also includes the new RD district that was just adopted, because that's a very significant change. So it includes everything up through the RD adoption, which was, I believe, February 8th.
Okay. Any objection to just rolling through this? Okay. Then we'll move on to item D, Z-06-21, recommendation that City Council pass a resolution to adopt the official 2021 zoning map for Bloomington, reflecting the map amendments from calendar year 2020. And staff is going to present a slide to let us know exactly what we're sending on.
Sorry, I have too many windows open. This is generally what you would be sending on, minus the numbers indicating substantial rezonings. I don't know if you'd like me to go over what rezonings occurred, but the most substantive is the downtown residence district.
I move that we recommend the city council. Is it okay to make a motion now? Okay. I move that we recommend the city council approve a resolution to adopt the official 2020 zoning map.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Stanzik,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Bulick,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Motney,
Yeah.
Ms. McCann,
Yes.
and Ms. Hayden.
Yes. That carries and concludes our regular agenda items, which would move us to item 6, which is old business. We do not have any. Item 7, new business, we do not have any, but I wanted to make sure everyone saw the note in your packet that this was the last paper packet that we will be receiving. So going forward, we'll just receive those electronic PDF copies. Does anyone else have any new business?
I do, real quick. I just wanted to see if we could get a very quick update, because I know we're all late here. And if we want to hold this over till the next meeting, I'm okay with that. But a quick update on sign code and where we are with that.
Can we bring that up at the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, good ask though, Justin. All right, that moves us to item 8.
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody wants to now. I'll second.
I'll second too.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.